Let's talk a little bit about Darth Vader and his role in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, because Deborah Chow was interviewed by Entertainment Weekly, or I guess this was part of their larger coverage that they're still rolling out about the Kenobi show, and she was asked about Vader in the series, and she talked a lot. She talks about the Obi-Wan Anakin relationship, and she talks about meeting Hayden Christensen for the first time, and they both have the Canadian connection, and they both met in Toronto, and for some reason nobody invited me to that meeting. I can't understand why, but the last quote that they have in the article, I think, is kind of interesting. I wanted to get your guys' take on this. Entertainment Weekly asks her, what kind of Vader will we see here on the show? We only saw him for a few quick scenes at the end of Revenge of the Sith in that armor. So where does he pick up 10 years later? And Deborah replies with, for us, it's very similar to Obi-Wan in the sense that he's between the two trilogies. So he isn't the New Hope Vader quite yet. You know what I mean? So we are with the character sort of in the middle of this period. It's still Vader, obviously, but it's a Vader that isn't quite fully formed. Isn't quite as fully formed as A New Hope. What does a not quite fully formed Vader look like? We talked a lot about Obi-Wan being sort of between headspaces, between the Revenge of the Sith and the A New Hope headspace. What does it look like for Vader in this time period? I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think of this.
Well, by the time that we get to the original trilogy, Vader's set on his path. He says it's too late for me. And yet you have him, after he gets off the operating table, saying, asking where Padme is and being very distraught when he finds out that she's gone. And so those are the kind of two Vaders that we know, is the one that's given up and the one that still, has feelings, in a sense. And so I think that this not fully formed Vader is going to potentially still maybe have some regrets about the past, maybe some attachment to what happened, and maybe might not be fully in the space of thinking that he's too far gone. There might be little glimpses of maybe I could go down a different path than the one that I'm going on. Maybe there's more conflict in his brain. So I'm really curious to see that, and I'm curious to see if this show maybe solidifies him where he's at in the original trilogy. If something that happens in the show gets him to that point.
Yeah, it's interesting how, that is the discussion in the original trilogy is there's conflict in you. No, there is no conflict. All this kind of stuff. And it's going to be interesting to see, coming out of Revenge of the Sith, he's kind of screwed. His life's been ruined, and he really has no other path than to just go forward and just be this killer, just be this awful person, and serve Palpatine. And you get to the original trilogy, obviously there is conflict. There is him, that spark of hope has been ignited in him from Luke. Then you go backwards and you go to, 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, is this a Vader that's begun to doubt what he's doing, to maybe not necessarily buying into this whole Empire serving Palpatine? He hates Palpatine. He hates all of this. He hates everything, and he hates himself more than anything else. And maybe something. I'm just thinking along the lines, just emotionally, Obi-Wan tries to save him, and maybe it backfires. Maybe it's just Obi-Wan showing back up is the one thing that sets him on course. This is the guy I hate more than myself, and I can direct all my hate and get this out of my system, and this is going to ruin me. And maybe this is kind of maybe it sets the tone for their relationship in the future, which is Vader's just I'm going to kill you because I hate you. And Obi-Wan's I've completely accepted that you are Vader. I'm not even going to mention your name. Your Anakin's gone. He's gone, and move on. What happens between those 2 points is fascinating.
are Obi-Wan and Vader? This is something I'm wondering. Are Obi-Wan and Vader going to have a conversation in this show that is not bookended or in the midst of a lightsaber duel?
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
And how do you set up that conversation? Does one of them capture the other one? Do they agree to a parlay and have peace negotiations or something?
The negotiator.
Yeah, yeah. Like I that's something I think would be really cool because we're so focused on the rematch of the century, right? We're so focused on that, but the real meat of the story is these two guys, grappling with this traumatic event that happened to them that was Revenge of the Sith, and where they've gone and what they've done with their lives since then. And I it's one of those things. I wonder how much Anakin thinks about Obi-Wan between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, or Revenge of the Sith in this show. And does he only ever think about Obi-Wan with rage, or does he sometimes think about him with something between sadness and nostalgia? And if you cornered Vader at just the right moment pre this series, and you gave him some truth serum, and you asked him, if Obi-Wan Kenobi showed up tomorrow and said, "Come with me, let's make this right," would you do it? Might he be inclined to say yes? It's a little bit of a trope in stories, but also probably in life as well, that people think that if somebody showed up and offered help to them, they would take it. But then when that help is actually offered to them, they turn it down for whatever reason. And Vader does say to Luke in the original trilogy, Obi-Wan once thought as you did. And so what if Obi-Wan shows up and he offers Vader, that olive branch? He offers him that opportunity to come back. And Vader swats it away, literally and figuratively.